Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the garage. Gerald here with you, of course. Each and every single month leading up to the Academy Awards, starting back in April of this year, I have been giving you power rankings for the top of the line 6 major categories, which include all 4 acting categories, Best Picture and Best Director. I will be doing that again for the November edition on this video, but I'm also, for the first wave of new categories, going to be introducing the predictions for Best Casting, both screenplay categories, original and adapted, as well as Best International Feature and Best Animated Feature. Those 5 new categories will be introduced on this video. We will get there, and like I said, there are timestamps down below if you want to skip ahead to a specific category. I want to tell everyone real quick about channel memberships because I am overwhelmed with emotion for the amount of folks that have joined up to this channel. It means the world to me. And for just a couple of bucks a month, there's a few different tiers. You can click join down below and read all about it. I'm trying to hook you guys up with like brainstorming sessions. I have a job where I travel around in my car and I'll do on my phone just kind of brainstorming what I'm going to do with my predictions. And I seek my members' advice for those types of things, some of which may come up on today's updates. I also try to release all of my rankings videos early, at least a couple or 3 days early. Then the general public will get those for all of my members. So if you're into it, again, just click join down below, and I definitely appreciate the consideration, and make sure you subscribe at the very least because we're going to be going deep into award season. It is in full effect. Here we go. So for all of these categories, there's going to be the group that I think is going to get nominated. So for picture, that's of course going to be 10, and then there will be a bench 10. For the other categories, it'll be 5 and 5. So looking at the top 10 here to get us started, a lot of people may raise their eyebrow right off the bat with my number 1 and number 2. Hamnet, I've got at number 1, which I also had in October. And that was, if you recall, about a week or so after One Battle After Another had come out in theaters when I did those updates back in October. And it was also right before the TIFF Festival, I believe, was about to start a couple days later. So it was kind of in a weird kind of purgatory period when it was very evident that a lot of people, really myself included for a brief second, were thinking that One Battle After Another is the clear frontrunner for Best Picture. And frankly, a lot of people still think that. When I do my power rankings and I do the brainstorming sessions that I mentioned earlier, I rarely, at least not on purpose, unless it comes up in my feed, will look at other people's predictions until I've kind of locked in on what I want to do. What I'm doing at this moment, and what I've been doing really since like August or September, is I think there's going to be a split this year in picture director. The only reason I say it is because it has been a long time since, or it's been too long, I should say, since the Academy has spread the love around. I think when we get there, you'll see that PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson, is probably going to be the number 1 favorable to win for Best Director, and also probably for screenplay, for adapted screenplay, I would think. So he's going to get his top of the line prestigious wins. He's going to have 2, maybe even 3 Oscars on the night of the Academy Awards, him personally, not to mention what the film might get. But Best Picture, I'm looking at a package that's going to really include Jessie Buckley, who I think is the clear frontrunner for lead actress right now. So you have your lead, and then probably a couple of other techs, possibly cinematography, costume design, score, editing. I mean, who knows? You can throw in multiple techs that a couple could fall Hamnet's way. I know for a fact that Chloe Zhao's films, even Eternals, all look very beautiful. They're all shot pristinely, and the visuals are breathtaking. And I don't think it's going to be any different in Hamnet, but it's a clearer path for PTA to get an Oscar in the fields of director and or screenplay. That's what I'm banking on. So that's why I have Hamnet at 1 and One Battle at 2. Although, just so you guys know, it's essentially a tie right now. Like, I'm literally thinking in my head and having a hunch and trying to kind of predict, which is the point, I guess. Wicked for Good, are we collectively thinking this is a Lord of the Rings situation, right? First of all, it's not really a sequel. You know, I might call it a sequel in this video for just to make it simpler for my commentary, but it's a part 2. It's a continuation. It's not a sequel. The musical is one musical. And the way it's broken up is essentially how John M. Chu is doing the narrative in these films. Act 1 ended. We waited a year. That's our intermission. We're getting Act 2. I know the story of the film. I won't get into all that. I know the story of the musical. I've seen the musical 4 times, I think, on stage. I know character arc-wise what we're going to be faced with from Glinda and from Elphaba, among others, too. Now, I have it ranked at number 3. It did go up 2 spots, though, for me this month. I think if we are in that Lord of the Rings era and this movie hits in the way that it did in its initial reactions a couple weeks ago from social media from folks that were invited to early screenings of it. So I have to believe that this movie, Wicked for Good, is going to be received overall better than the first Wicked. And I'm also including the box office in that. I think with the exception of maybe Avatar, which we'll talk in a second, it's probably going to be the highest grossing film at the Oscars this year, represented at the Oscars. I'm not predicting this, obviously, but if the Academy takes a Lord of the Rings approach to honoring this behemoth of these two films kind of collectively over the course of a year, year and a half, we could have an upset in Best Picture, which wouldn't really be an upset. I mean, it's probably going to be phenomenal. But a lot of people, obviously me included, are saying either Hamnet or One Battle. I haven't seen anybody that does punditry predictions putting Wicked for Good at number 1. So that's my dark horse upset Best Picture winner this year, is Wicked for Good. Sinners is my number 4. I haven't moved it in a couple months. I just think the chatter on it has kind of quieted a little bit. They did re-release it for Halloween, which I think was cool. You know, they need to keep that movie in the conversation. So the campaigning on the circuit, the junkets, the interviews, the podcasts, like, you need to see them in popular culture over the next month to 2 months. And I'm not seeing it enough. And that's just me. Now, I know WB is really going to ramp up their campaign. They just put their FYC page out, I think, last week. So you got to imagine we are going to start to see a lot of that stuff and hear those folks on podcasts and YouTube channels and local news channels and all this shit. And I think that if Sinners kind of is reintroduced to people, or maybe introduced to people for the first time in the last quarter of this year, it could be back in the conversation. I do think it gets nominated. I do think it's currently top 5. It Was Just an Accident moved up for me. That's the Iranian film directed by Jafar Panahi, which will also show up in a little bit on my international feature predictions for the first time. It was the Palme d'Or winner, and it's distributed by Neon Studios. That combo has only missed once in the last 7 years, which was for Julia DeKernell's Titane, which, I mean, she's fucking a car in it, so that's not going to get nominated for Best Picture, even though I love it. It's not an Academy film, but It Was Just an Accident is. And more importantly, Jafar Panahi is a figure that the Academy can go, come here, let's embrace you, let's show the world to you, let's introduce you to everybody. You are a filmmaker that we adore, that we admire. Your message is important. You know, what he's gone through in his personal life just to be able to make movies is a really, really special narrative. And the movie itself, in addition to the narrative, is tremendous. I just saw it a few days ago. I put a review up here on the channel, by the way. And it's one of my favorites of the year. It's in my top 10 of the year. It is got some weird dark humor in it, which I didn't expect, but it's a really important story, and it's a thriller at its core. It's a human story. It has so many great things going for it, and Panahi's narrative on top of that, I think it leaped over sentimental value in terms of the international representation on the picture 10, as you see here. I'll talk about that one next. Sentimental value, I dropped down, I think, a spot or 2. I think it's still going to get a lot of love in the acting categories. Screenplay, hopefully Joaquin Trier for director. I think Stellan Skarsgård might be the front runner still for supporting. So I do think sentimental value is going to be a big player from Neon also. But I just feel like that Panahi narrative is going to be the extra credit between those two films, if those are the two international representations in Best Picture, which I had to really brainstorm to kind of figure out what 2 I was going to put in. Now, I will say this could be the year for 3 international. That's going to happen. Every year, more international members are added to the Academy. I just don't know that I'm going to go out on a limb and predict a precedent like that to be like, okay, this is the year that's going to happen. When it does happen, I'll be like, I should have predicted that. Marty Supreme, I premiered last month at number 6, I think, really based on the feedback from the secret New York Film Festival screening for that movie. So more folks have seen it since. Some other folks that I trust have got screenings scheduled, but they haven't happened yet. It doesn't come out until Christmas Day. If you follow this channel, you might know I'm a Timothée Chalamet freaking fanboy. Like, I love the guy. I'm literally his borderline campaign manager last season for A Complete Unknown. So I'm thrilled about his chances as a lead actor. I've always been very reluctant, and I've always been like grain of salt with Marty Supreme, just because it's a film from a first-time filmmaker. And of course, those get nominated, sure. But it's a first-time filmmaker who's been in the conversation before as a duo with his brother, and they've literally ignored those projects as if they didn't even get made. So, in other words, there's nothing on paper, historically, to show me that the Academy is going to be like, all right, here we go. I left Jay Kelly, and if you'll notice, it's my number 8. If you'll notice, it's the lone nomination for Netflix. It's a story about Hollywood. And I mentioned in jest on my last predictions video that Hollywood loves kissing its own ass. Okay, so you look at this list. You've got sentimental value, which there's an actor story built in. You've got Jay Kelly's essentially a dramatized version of George Clooney himself. You've also got Is This Thing On at my number 10 for the first time in my top 10, which is about a stand-up comedian, but he's, it's performance, right? It's stage performance. It's at least acting adjacent. And I think there's other people in the industry depicted in the movie. Well, Hamnet as well. Hamnet's a Shakespeare era actors, right? Performers, playwrights. So 4 out of 10 movies, at least, that are going to be like driven towards that group of folks, that population. To me, it sounds like that's the most, at least American Academy film that there is this year. I also think that it could be another Oscar villain. And a couple of my members have mentioned that in the past too. I think Jay Kelly is this year's Oscar villain. I think it gets into Best Picture when other people are going to think Frankenstein or Train Dreams or other films from Netflix specifically, or even other films in general, were more deserving. And they may be right, but it happens time and time again. And a lot of times it's Netflix, Maestro, Don't Look Up, Emilia Perez, good Lord. Real quick to wrap up my 10, Avatar Fire and Ash did drop a couple spots, but I've told you guys this since April. Since I did the very first round of these, I am not taking James Cameron out of my 10 for Best Picture. I will absolutely not be removing Avatar unless I have to. And for me, that's going to be precursors. Really, 2, 3, 4 precursors. Once they start to pile up and Avatar's not showing up, it falls out of my 10. But until then, there's nothing on God's green earth that would get me to bet against JC this early. Sorry. I've done it before, and I've had videos like this where I've been like, Way of Water, big fucking deal. We already did this. No, it showed up. Now, did it get fewer? Yes. But also James Cameron himself, being at the helm of a project, almost always is present at the Academy Awards in some category or another, and usually multiple. So I don't think they're going to ignore this film if it hits. It's another Christmas time release, which is perfect award season release date. Is This Thing On? I want to talk about for a brief second. I'll tag it on this video, but I did a video where I did this whole research project about movie studios and what they're pushing this season and how successful they've been in the last 10 years, or since 2010. So 15 years. Searchlight Pictures, which of course was Fox Searchlight before, but Searchlight has had 17 movies nominated for Best Picture since 2010. 17 in the last 15 years. They've also had 3 winners in the last 15 years. It's a pretty good winning percentage for Best Picture. I was thinking to myself, I'm doing these predictions and I've had nothing in the top 10 for Searchlight since April. And I'm like, are they really going to just miss award season? It doesn't seem feasible to me. I think, and this is really studio based, I think Searchlight is going to have a Best Picture nominee this year. And if that's the case, it's going to be between Is This Thing On from Bradley Cooper and Testament of Ann Lee from Mona Fastfold, who we'll talk about here in a second. I'm choosing to put chips in right now on Is This Thing On. I already talked about Searchlight, that's 1. 2, it's directed by Bradley Cooper. We're just talking about PTA with 11 nominations. I think Bradley Cooper over several categories has 13 Academy Award nominations with no wins. It's insane. It's really just him and PTA and Glenn Close, I guess, that just get nominated literally every time they wake up in the morning. But they won't give him an Oscar. Bradley Cooper's another one. A lot of people might not realize that because some of them are producer. He's got a couple for acting. He's got director, Stars Born, all this song, all this shit, right? But 13 nominations with no wins is a fucking lot. Okay, Maestro alone, he netted a bunch and didn't get anything for that either. They're going to want to nominate the guy. Obviously, they love doing that. And it's a detachment from those grand, Maestro was like a music biopic, but just these grand productions, right? That are just I don't want to say Oscar bait because I think he's a great artist, but they have that vibe to them, right? I've heard with this Is This Thing On, it's much more of a chamber piece, broken down character study, dramedy about a relationship and divorce, and almost sounds more like Noah Baumbach than Bradley Cooper, honestly. But Baumbach's already got something this year with Jay Kelly. Let's go to the next slide because then I can touch on Testament of Ann Lee when we get there as to why I decided to go with Bradley Cooper there at number 10. And you see my 11, 12, 13. Let's talk about those real quick. So Frankenstein and Train Dreams real quick. So those are the other 2 Netflix plays, I think. They also have A House of Dynamite from Catherine Bigelow. I loved it. I did a review on the channel. I think I gave it an 8 out of 10. The screenplay is its strongest suit, and I think there's a good argument to be made for Noah Oppenheim in that category. But Frankenstein and Train Dreams, because of that kind of weird mixed reception to House of Dynamite, are there other players? So I mentioned this earlier. Are they going to get 2 into the 10? I don't think they are this year. And the reason being is because I think they're hopefully going to learn their lesson here. They took on too much stuff. They have, just on this screen alone, they have 4 players that are major players for the Academy Award, and that's not even everything. You could have said a couple months ago, like Ballad of a Small Player was, they have some for animated this year. They have all kinds of shit, okay, in the Oscars race this year, which is great. But when you're trying to drill down to a Best Picture, not only nominee, but win, they don't have a win yet, guys. I've made the joke before that Netflix is the bridesmaid, never the bride, because they're always getting shit nominated, but none of them are strong enough to be a winner. So what Netflix needs to do, in my opinion, when it comes to award season at least, is these are our like 2, or you could really even do 1, but you could say these are our 2 that we believe in. You know, so if this year, if it was Frankenstein and J. Kelly, okay, those are our 2 that we're going to push, that we believe in, okay? Where you're not making it a numbers game, because when you make it a numbers game, you're not going to get 4 or 5 movies into Best Picture for nominations and then work it out then. You know what I mean? You're going to have to get them there over that line, over from 11 to 10. And what does it take to do that? Now, with that being said, what it takes to do that is a name like Guillermo del Toro with the Academy. They fucking love this guy. I do too. You know, he is a gothic horror filmmaker that has been able to bleed that genre into prestige. And I think it's phenomenal. You know, movies like Nightmare Alley, The Shape of Water, you know, even his Pinocchio animated film that was kind of unorthodox. All that shit, when you look at it for face value, is not Oscar material. If those films were the way they are, okay, and they were directed by some random horror filmmaker, they would still be really fucking good movies, but the Academy would never press play on them. Guillermo del Toro carries an element of prestige with his name. That's why I think if they get 2 in, that's the other one. Train Dreams, however, is Greg Quidar, Clint Bentley wrote the screenplay. We'll talk about that in a moment. I think it's in the mix for cinematography. It might be my front runner, and that's just based on the goddamn trailer I saw. It was beautiful. So Train Dreams has a lot going for it. It also is coming out, I think, around Thanksgiving as well. So that last month and a half of the year for award season. And it's got a lot of chatter around it. And I'm wondering if Netflix said, oh, maybe we should have, why didn't we go in on Train Dreams? You know, what are we doing? And it may be too late for them. You know, maybe they were kind of like me with Catherine Bigelow, and they're like, it's Bigelow, it's Del Toro. We're good. We don't need to do anything else with this. They're going to be great movies. We'll promote them, and that's it. And I think they're realizing that it's not that simple. I mean, even a movie like J. Kelly, which is probably going to be inferior in terms of quality, is going to speak to the group that you're pushing it towards a little bit better, I would think. I think when I first started these, The Secret Agent was like 19 or 18 for me. And it's like been creeping up ever so slightly every month, like a spot or a couple spots. And this month is at 12. I cannot wait to see it. I still haven't. The Brazilian factor is huge. Brazil went all in on I'm Still Here last year, which was one of my favorite movies of the year. And I was so excited for Fernando Torres and for that film, and just a lot of things that went around the Brazilian population being able to lift that project up. My reservation with it is not because of the merit of the film or Brazil or anything else. It's because of the history with the Academy and international nominees, as well as nominees from the same studio, especially an independent studio like Neon. So again, could 3 films from an international non-English language standpoint get in this year? Absolutely. And if so, I think it is The Secret Agent. But I just think that it was just an accident, and sentimental value are too much of a shoe-in. It's a barrier that can't be crossed now, because we've seen the reviews. We know that both of them are well loved. You know, it's just those 2 are not going to miss, I don't think. Especially with the Palm winning, going to Jafar and his narrative, I just don't see it happening. Also, Neon Studios, they have 2 now, right? They happen to be international, but they have 2. An independent studio has never gotten more than 2 in the Best Picture 10, ever. So could it happen? Absolutely, it could happen. This could be the year, because these are all strong contenders. So I've got Begonia up a spot and Park Chan-wook's No Other Choice down a spot. They basically swapped for me. I think Begonia is going to be a big tech player, and I've stuck to my guns and my hunch on the fact that I don't think Begonia is a top of the line where the Academy is going to go, oh, we have to award this, you know, like they did Poor Things, for example. You know, visually striking, yes. Is it as visually striking as Poor Things? I don't think so. It is very, very beautiful, but I don't think the cinematography, the director of photography, all that, I don't think it's as beautiful or kind of jaw-dropping as Poor Things was in a fictionalized kind of world. You know, Begonia is the, not first movie necessarily, but it's like one of the very few films from Yorgos that kind of like looks like real world. It looks like a town in America somewhere, or could be. I'm not saying that can't be beautiful or, you know, takes effort as well, because it does. I think it's in the mix for that kind of stuff. Production design, the old kind of like farmhouse that Jesse Plemons and his cousin live in, and, you know, the really cold modern aesthetic of the office building that Emma Stone works in. Like, production design is in the mix for Begonia, as is cinematography, as is screenplay, which will be adapted, as this is a remake from, I think, a Japanese film or a Korean film. So it is in the mix for like probably 5, 6 nominations below the line. Well, screenplay and then below the line. I don't see it getting into the acting categories, and I don't see it getting into the picture. It's fucking weird, guys. It's really weird. It's brutal. It's hard to watch at times. I talked about No Other Choice, and Neon's, much like Netflix, just has too much. And Park Chan-wook had the brief kind of WGA controversy. You know, I read a little bit about it. It doesn't bother me. Very similar to the Brutalist AI controversy from last season. Like, sometimes people just latch onto these things and turn them into something more than they are, or more than the culprit intended them to be. And I don't think Park Chan-wook was trying to do anything malignant or malicious personally, but nonetheless, it exists, and it may hurt him in various categories. I don't know how, you know, strict and stern some of those members that are going to be voting are going to be. But either way, as much as we don't want to admit it, how many times has the Academy snubbed Park Chan-wook? I mean, you know, literally brings tears to my eyes to even think about it. I mean, I can't even count them, to be honest. It's like countless. You know, I told you in my 10, I decided to go with Is This Thing On? And I mentioned the Bradley Cooper factor. Bradley Cooper's involvement or relationship with the Academy is deeper and longer than Brady Corbet and Mona Fastwell's. That's basically what it comes down to. Also, Testimony of Man Lee has gotten mixed response. Some people that I follow loved it. Other people are like, what the fuck was that? Like, no. It's like a musical, but not set up as a musical. It's got eerie musical numbers in it. Amanda Seyfried seems to be something everybody can collectively agree on. The performances in general. It looks beautiful. It probably will get some technical nominations. But I don't think a movie that divided or divisive from an enjoyment standpoint can make it into Best Picture, or at least I'm banking on it not doing that. Searchlight is good, though, as I said. So it's going to be one of those two. I mean, I'm telling you, I think Searchlight's getting a nominee this year. That's what I think, in the 10. Right now, I'm saying, Is This Thing On? If Ann Lee gains momentum and we start to see it show up more and more places, then maybe I'll be like, okay, well, they aren't bothered by that, you know, narrative, just stylistic choice or whatever. And maybe it isn't over a little indie kind of like romantic drama, like comedy, like Is This Thing On? I mean, I don't know. I know it's going to be one of the two, but yeah, we'll see. I talked about House of Dynamite already. It fell down for me just because of the mixed response. You know, if it was up to me, it would be in the 10. I mean, it was good. It was really, really good. I love the Rashomon style of storytelling. The screenplay was very witty, a lot of dialogue, and you're basically rewriting the same screenplay in 3 acts, and you have to do it in a commanding, engaging way, and I think Oppenheim did that. We'll talk about screenplays here in a moment. Song Sung Blue from Focus is another weird one, okay? I know the new trailer came out. I haven't seen it yet. The first trailer was fucking horrendous. It was not a good trailer. It was like, this is the stupidest Lifetime movie adaptation I've ever seen. I mean, it had some great people in it. You know, Hugh Jackman, Kate Hudson, I love them. I love Neil Diamond too, to be honest. But the movie itself, the trailer itself, I mean, what the fuck? No. And then, like, that's literally what I was thinking. And then, like, a week later or something like that, everybody's like, Song Sung Blue, Kate Hudson, Oscar nominated. I'm like, what? The trailer I just saw? So I started, like, reading about it and watching some clips, and then they did release a couple other things about it. And, you know, I think Kate Hudson is going to have some gravitas that's going to come along with her award season chances. The movie, much like I said with Marty Supreme earlier, even though I do have Marty in my 10, I'm just being skeptical. I'm taking it easy on Song Sung Blue because it still looks the way it looks, you know, and I've seen some reviews of people that say it's going to be a crowd pleaser, right? The GA is going to love it, especially probably people of a certain age. It's based on a true story, so it does have the biopic part. But I'm just not sold on that being the movie that, like, you know, comes out of nowhere around Christmas time. It could happen, you know, especially with those names attached to it. But, you know, the filmmaker has never really shown up at the Academy Awards. The music biopic, this could be the first year where we don't get a music biopic in the 10 in a while, which would be kind of cool if you ask me. I'm not saying that it'll be bad, but, you know, I'm good for a minute. You know, we can take a break. Speaking of music biopics, Deliver Me From Nowhere, what the hell was that? I did a review for it. It's so boring, so slow. I love Springsteen's music, and I couldn't do it. It's not going to get nominated, I don't think, for literally anything. You might, maybe, possibly get an off-random nomination for, like, Best Sound or something like that, but I'm saying you won't, but you could. That was a bummer. If for no other reason, it was a bummer for Jeremy Allen White and Jeremy Strong, because of those movies. If that movie's not strong enough, I don't think they even get in. So we'll talk about that in a second. I just saw Die My Love yesterday, actually. The Lynn Ramsey film. I dropped it down to 20. It will probably be off my board eventually, because after seeing it, you know, Lynn Ramsey movies have never, in like 25 years since she's been making feature films, received an Oscar nomination for nothing. Nothing. No screenplay, no performance. You know, I had to look because I was like, Tilda Swinton must have gotten nominated. First, we need to talk about Kevin, because I remember it being in the conversation, but she didn't. She got snubbed that year. So nothing for any of her films. I don't see the Academy seeing Die My Love and going, okay, this is the Lynn Ramsey movie we were waiting on. I don't see that happening. Now, I will talk about Jennifer Lawrence here in a moment. I don't think that's going anywhere. But the movie is barely hanging on for dear life on my main board here. I don't think it's going to happen. But just so you know, I did love the movie, and it's in my top 2 of the year. It's battling with The Ugly Stepsister for my favorite movie of the year. It was fucking great. The review's on the channel if you want to check it out. So as usual, Best Picture takes up the bulk of the conversation. So hopefully I can fly through might not be the best phrase, but a little bit quicker for the rest of the categories. First up, we'll look at lead actress. There was a couple shakeups here, a couple. So Jessie Buckley, I talked about Hamden earlier. She's number 1, period. You know, I haven't seen it, in fairness, but everybody that I follow, and I mean literally everybody, has said that this is the performance of the year. Gut-wrenching, emotional. You believe everything she's going through. It's a period piece. It's going to have all the other stuff kind of coming with it. Your lead actress is going to lift up the film overall, as you saw, have it winning Best Picture, really for that reason, because they're going to be voting in Best Picture or ranking it in Best Picture really for her. You know, for her performance, really. It's going to be happening twice, along with the acting branch. So she's my number 1. I did switch Cynthia Erivo and Renate Ransva from Sentimental Value. I know what Elphaba goes through in Act 2 of the film. Same thing can be said for Glinda here in a moment when we get there. So I know that it's essentially the same character that they loved last year, giving a different performance. Does that make sense? Like, you know, in Act 1, Elphaba's kind of finding herself and discovering what's going on and investigating the various plot devices that we have in the musical. In the second act, same thing with Glinda, they are firm in who they are, right? And it is not a growth arc as it is in Act 1. It is a resounding resilience arc, you know, and this is who I am, and this is why I am who I am. It's crazy. I mean, I don't think anybody can beat Buckley this year, but you know, when you look at honestly below Buckley and the rest of the field, you know, it's really funny to me. I was talking to one of my channel members on text the other day. We were saying, man, lead actress is weak. You know, Julia Roberts fell off, and you know, we're trying to find people to fill in, like Sydney Sweeney or whatever. No offense to any of those ladies. We're like, yeah, it's kind of weird, right? And then now, a month and a half later, it's I don't know what to fucking do. There's so many great performances and big names, along with newcomers, and it is a really, really diverse bunch of ladies that are very prestigious performers, and in some cases would be first-time nominees. So I've got Erivo at 2, Renate Ransva at 3, only because we don't have multiple feedback from Wicked for Good, but from Sentimental Value, I've heard, you know, Renate kind of disappears for a while in the film. There's a lot of supporting performances in the movie that we'll get to in a moment that kind of not necessarily take the spotlight away, but are kind of the focus of a lot of memorable stuff that happens in the movie. And then you kind of have Renate at the center, at the core of it, or at least her relationship with Stellan Skarsgård in the film. It's the father-daughter story. So I think she gets in. I've got her at number 3 right now. Okay, so here's where it gets crazy. All right, so where should I start? Okay, I told you guys, so when I have a hunch about something in early predictions phase, okay, yes, I want to be accurate, of course. So I'm not going to put, you know, Sophie Thatcher from Companion in my lead actress category, although that would be a worthy nominee if I'm being honest with you. But at the same time, if I have a hunch and I believe that something is going to happen just because I believe it because it feels like it could happen, right? And then you couple that with, you know, Oscars historical data or the vibes on the circuit or film festivals, whatever, and you're like, oh, okay, that is a possibility, then I stay with it, okay? So I'll touch on my number 5 real quick to lead into that point. So Jennifer Lawrence and Die My Love, by the way, I saw it yesterday, so she's been in my 5 since April, because I said to myself, well, first of all, you know, we were just talking about how the category was a little weak in the beginning of the season too. And I'm like, what's Jennifer Lawrence? You know, she's multiple nominee, right? Winner, Oscar winner. She's been out of the game, at least Oscars wise, for 10 or 11 years since Joy. And that's the other point, is that Lynn Ramsey's movies don't hit. I talked about that, which would really be the reason why she would miss. But I did a project where I looked into, again, since 2010, modern era, if you will, how many times an actor or actress got nominated in the lead category, and that was the only nomination for the film. And it's happened quite a bit, actually. So you don't have a Best Picture nominee or player even in any of the other categories if your performance is good enough to stand on its own to be one of the best acting performances of the year. And every once in a while, one of those will show up. In fact, last year, I think, was the first time in a long time where all the nominees were in a Best Picture nominee. That doesn't always happen, or actually rarely happens. So I don't think it's going to happen 2 years in a row. That's number one. Number two is, if Jennifer Lawrence has been nominated multiple times and she's been on a hiatus from doing that, and this is the best performance of her career, which is what everybody's saying, and by the way, I saw it, and it is, okay? Just fucking tell you, it absolutely is. It's not even a performance. It's like an acting, like, you know, I was trying to like find the words when I did my review, because it's like she literally stepped outside of herself and just like experienced like motherhood and postpartum and depression and, you know, dealing with mental health and marriage issue. I mean, it was just like, it wasn't even like she was acting. I mean, it's the most like breathtaking thing. You know, it's going to sound hyperbolic. I was joking with a buddy of mine last night. We were talking about it. And I said, you know what, dude, I can't even think of a performance I've ever seen in my life that was as crazy as that was. I mean, it was so good. She was so locked in to what the screenplay was asking of her. Ramsey gave her the freedom to do whatever. And I mean, she just went all in on this character of Grace. So I am keeping her in my 5. She's been in my 5 all year because of her name and because of that single nomination from a film that doesn't hit elsewhere. It's just too unforgettable and powerful of her performance. I literally can't imagine the majority of the acting branch seeing that and not nominating. I wouldn't understand it. It would be the craziest shit. Number 4 you see is Chase Infinity. I just debuted her here because I did have her in my supporting predictions last month, because it was before they announced that she was going to be going lead. So I basically just moved her over. Now in the supporting category, which was a little bit stronger at the time at least, I had her at like 7 or 8. I did put her in the 5 here because I've mentioned already that Kate Hudson from Song Sung Blue I'm being skeptical on. That could be the 5, right? She could be in the 5. Amanda Seyfried, I've heard amazing things about too, but and I'm trying to be like logistical here. If Ann Lee doesn't hit anywhere else, just like how Die My Love's not going to hit anywhere else, only one of those ladies is going to get in. Right? And actually the same thing could be said for Rose Byrne. So we'll go ahead and talk about that for If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. A lot of people are talking about her. I don't think that movie's going to get anywhere else. So now you've got 3 movies that may not get love anywhere else, and you would have the sole nomination for your lead actress. Of those, I think Jennifer Lawrence stands the best chance. I do think 6 through 9, though, I'm not even joking you, all 4 of those could be in the nominees. I'm not kidding. It could be the 4 of them with Jessie Buckley. So that's what was so funny when I was talking to my friend and channel member, because like 1 through 9, any of those ladies, based on everything I'm hearing, based on cred, could be in, okay? I don't think some of these combos would be in together, though. I don't see Rose Byrne and Jennifer Lawrence in, because they're both in films that deal with postpartum and both have a kind of a similar vibe to them. So we'll have to see how it shakes out. This is what I have right now for my near misses, but honestly, with the exception of Sydney Sweeney on this screen, any of these ladies could be in the 5 for Best Actress. It's just where I'm falling right now, what I'm kind of feeling right now. And I wanted to be steadfast in my support of Jennifer Lawrence because I've been with her all year. And after seeing that performance, there's no way I could tell. I mean, if you follow acting, you're going to be blown away by what she does in this movie. So I was definitely not going to take her out just because I think, oh, Kate Hudson, you know, plays a musician or whatever. Like, I'm not, you know, now if I see it and Kate Hudson does to me what she did to me when I saw her in Almost Famous, then we might be in a different conversation. But right now, I just think that based on the substance of that performance that J-Law gave, that's why she's in that 5th spot right now. But those 6 through 9, I mean, flip a coin. I mean, they're all, this is going to be the craziest. We say this every year, don't we? But this is going to be the craziest fucking lead actress race probably of all time. And then we'll say it again next year. So, I don't know. Moving right along, this one should actually be really easy. So let's look at my top 5 here for lead actor next. So one major change, but that's really it. So Timothy, my guy, Timmy's going to be at number 1 for Marty Supreme until Oscars day. It's funny that at like 28 years old or whatever he is, 29, that he has a narrative to like be overdue for an Oscar, but like, you know, I mean, you know, he's an acting heavyweight. Everything stayed the same in terms of the order for Leo, Michael B. Jordan for Sinners, and Wagner Moura for The Secret Agent, but they all did move up a spot. And then guess what? That means my number 6 from last month moved up a spot into the 5, which would be Ethan Hawke for Blue Moon. So in Blue Moon, you know, it's a biopic. Again, it's Hollywood adjacent because it deals with Broadway musicals and Loren's Hart in the 1940s, I think, when Oklahoma debuted on Broadway, and Richard Rodgers, and like it's performative love that's given in this movie. I think Ethan Hawke is in the 5 this year, finally, for Best Actor. When it comes to those other 3, they've been in my 5 for quite a while. Wagner Moura was like seesawing between like 5 and 6. And I just think that The Secret Agent is going to have a lot of support, especially in like international feature, possibly even like screenplay, director, that kind of stuff. And I think the best chance for it to really break the ceiling would be an international feature and an actor. I mean, we saw it happen with Fernando Torres. Now, that movie spiraled into a surprise for all of us. It was a pleasant surprise when it showed up in Best Picture. So just be mindful of The Secret Agent as an international player across the board in multiple categories. But I do think that Wagner Moura's performance, and I really like him, he's very charismatic, he's a great actor. When we go to the next slide and you see the near misses, I will say, however, the only reason everybody kind of bumped up there and Ethan Hawke is now in the 5 is because Jeremy Allen White plummeted from 2 to 10. He was number 2 last month for me. He's number 10 this month. I already kind of talked about it, but it was just such a like uninspired performance from him in the movie from an acting standpoint. The musical numbers I didn't have a problem with, and he went to great lengths to learn the mannerisms of Springsteen and the voice and all that stuff and played music. I mean, it's great. But, you know, we're not nominating a concert performance. We're nominating an acting performance, and the movie didn't give him enough to do from a range standpoint. It was a very muted performance, in my opinion. It was good. It just wasn't like, oh my God, I can't believe he did that. He went outside of himself. Like I was saying to Jennifer Lawrence, it wasn't like that. So I just don't think it's strong enough to get a lead actor nomination for what would be a first-time nominee. I do think Clooney could surprise in lead actor. You know, I've got it in picture, obviously, which would help. Jesse Plemons was phenomenal in Begonia. I mean, just, you know, I didn't move him because I saw it and I'm like, God damn, he's so good. Another one that doesn't have enough Oscar nominations, in my opinion, and is owed his flowers as well. I've already told you guys why I have reservations about Begonia as a film. I do think it's going to get some nominations, and I honestly hope I'm wrong because I like the movie. And I love Jesse Plemons and, of course, Emma Stone also. I think Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, for The Smashing Machine is probably dead. Probably. But I am hanging on to a sliver of hope for him because of the hair and makeup nomination that I do think it will probably get for The Smashing Machine. You know, A24 is a good campaign outlet to have behind you. If they realize the movie's not probably going to get anything else, they could literally go all in on hair and makeup and Dwayne Johnson, which, of course, is the product of most of that. So that could be a combo that comes together to the Academy Awards. I think Leo and Timmy are in no matter what happens the rest of the season. But those last 3, you know, it's not as bad as lead actress, but I really don't know. Will Arnett, I just debuted. I moved him into the 10 because of I need to make sense to myself, to you guys. So if I have the movie, right, in Best Picture, which I do, what else is it going to get, right? So that's when you got to start like trying to figure out the package and like the haul and what's it going to do. And I have heard that, you know, he's a sketch comedy actor, kind of like comedian that goes places that nobody really expects, kind of like what The Rock did, honestly, in The Smashing Machine from a dramatic standpoint. So I'm hanging tight on the project as a whole. Right now, I feel really good about it because of the Bradley Cooper factor and the Searchlight factor. Another commentary that should go fairly quickly here for supporting actress, although I will say this is the category that may have had the most shakeups in terms of what I had in October, because I've got 3 new entries here on this one. We'll get there in a second because they're all in the bottom 5 right now. But as you're looking at the top 5, I didn't make any changes for Ariana Grande. I'm not going to. I do think that regardless of what that film gets, this is a young woman who has acted, yes, but primarily is a pop musician, a performer, you know, concerts, whatever. Global phenomenon, right? I was just talking about it a second ago with Will Arnett. The Academy and the acting branch can be snooty when it comes to like, you're not one of us, but they did that last year for her. She got in as a nominee. She didn't win. I thought she should have won, especially up against the Emilia Perez bullshit, but whatever. I love you, Zoe. I'm sorry, but I mean, let's be honest. So it could be a righting of their wrongs type situation, but it's also such a good performance and bringing that character to life and giving it new life and, you know, giving it a face outside of, you know, the Broadway version of that character. And she was just perfect for that. You know, did such a good job. I hope she wins. I've had her at number 1 since I did my very, very first video. Inga Isbader Lilius. Am I saying that right? I'm just going to call her Inga. I never know if I say that right. I think it's Norwegian or Swedish. From Sentimental Value, I left her at number 2. I heard that she has maybe the most impact in the film in terms of like emotional outbursts and that kind of stuff. I can't wait to see it. You know, tears, screaming, that kind of shit. Tiana Taylor, I did move up to my number 3. You know, I had her early in the season in my top 5, and a lot of people were saying you shouldn't do that. She's not, you know, she's not going to get in. She's only in the movie for like 10 minutes, like this, that, this, that. So, you know, I always had her kind of hovering around my like 7 to 10, but I just put her back in the 5, you know, based on really the success of one battle. So she's in. What I had to do on this video, or for this round of rankings, is I had to decide, am I going to have 2 actresses in from Sentimental Value, One Battle After Another, or Marty Supreme? If you look up and down the list when we get to my next slide in just a second, you'll see those 3 movies have a lot of representation in supporting actress. I decided to go with Sentimental Value for the international factor. The other 2 are not international. And also because I have already said that I'm not a huge believer, I'm not a disbeliever necessarily, but I'm not a huge believer in Marty Supreme yet as to what it's going to get, like how many nominations. But I do feel really confident in Sentimental Value getting at least, you know, 6+ nominations. So with that being the case, I'm looking at the 2 supporting actresses that I feel like both have equal parts of like importance in the narrative, which would be Elle Fanning and Inga. The 5th spot I'm leaving with Gwyneth Paltrow right now for Marty Supreme. I've had her in my 5, I think the whole time, honestly. She may have dropped out for like 1 month, but I just think, you know, there's a lot of attention paid to elder performers, especially like in supporting roles, when maybe they've done lead a lot in their life, or they left to go do TV, or they were just out of the game for a long time, or whatever. And, you know, Gwyneth Paltrow is an actress that's been doing work for multiple decades. Previous winner, previous nominee. You know, that was a Oscars for Shakespeare in Love that was unfortunate with the blemishes on that award season with the Weinstein factor and, you know, maybe buying wins and that kind of shit. I mean, it's sad to hear and sucks to look back on. But when you strip all that away, I mean, it's not a bad movie, Shakespeare in Love, and it wasn't a bad performance. Now, it was up against Saving Private Ryan, so should it have won? I mean, fucking no, but it was a good movie, and you can't fault Gwyneth Paltrow because she did give a great performance. I'm going with Gwyneth Paltrow. She rounds out my 5. Let's look at the next slide. There's Odessa at 6. New entry for me. I just added her based on the feedback out of the New York Film Festival and some other critical reception I've seen. Amy Madigan, I moved up, I think, 1 spot to 7. You know, I feel bad because a lot of people, including in my comments, by the way, strangers in my comments, are being eerily like kind of weird about Amy Madigan's and my prediction of her. Like, I love her, first of all. When I did my review of Weapons when it came out, I talked about her for like 5 minutes from Uncle Buck and just her whole career. I mean, I think she's a very well-established, wonderful actress. And this role was like nothing she'd ever done. And it is Oscar worthy. Absolutely, 1000%. When I do predictions, this is not how I feel. I don't think she's number 7 of the year. This is not my personal like preference or ranking of these actresses or whatever after they come out. This is what I think the Academy is or isn't going to do. I do think they are considering her, which is why she's even on the board to begin with, especially with all the campaigning and chatter I've been hearing from WB and other outlets. And social media has a big following for Amy Madigan right now, which could go a long way. We saw, you know, the Andrea Riseborough of it all a couple years ago. So could it happen? Absolutely. If it happens, just so everybody knows, I will be thrilled if it happens. I'm not predicting it to happen because the Academy doesn't normally nominate those types of performances. And by normally, I mean hardly ever. So I just want to clear that up. Like, I love Madigan. I want her to get nominated, but that's not what this video is. This video is me predicting what I think the Academy will do. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm not always right, just so you guys know. I miss stuff all the time. I also added in Wunmi Masaku from Sinners. She's a new entry for me. She has not been on my board at all since April. I added her in there recently because I do think that Sinners is going to have a lot of support this award season. And I didn't have anybody from that movie in this category. And I thought that was strange. And I was thinking Haley Steinfeld because she's a previous Oscar nominee. But then, you know, sometimes when you go on social media, you'll see different things, whether the studio is pushing it out or whatever, or just fans of the movie even. And you'll just see different things. And I've seen a lot more in regards to Wunmi's performance than Haley's. I love both of them. They're vastly different, honestly. And Haley does some really fucking cool things in that movie that, you know, were transformative for her. And I don't want to give it away. It's fairly new, but, you know, she has basically a two-tone version of her character. And Wunmi's pretty much the same character, but very, very memorable as well. So I had players in all the other categories. I just didn't have anything in supporting actress. Glenn Close, I left alone. I don't think this is going to happen, but it's Glenn Close. And, you know, I've heard that she has a couple really, like, Oscar clip scenes in Wake Up Dead Man. I see it next week, actually. So I'll have a better grasp of how Oscar-y those might be. But right now, I'm definitely going to leave her on the board in contention because mean, it's Glenn Close, you know. I mean, she's like the Diane Warren of acting, you know. And then Regina Hall rounds out my 10. It says new entry, but that's because she disappeared for a couple months and now she's back in. Emily Blunt, by the way, is the one that dropped out of that 10 spot for Smashing Machine for Regina. Well, this will be the easiest one in the friggin' world to go over real quick. There's only been a slight change to the top 5. So my 1 through 4 did not move from last month. There you see him. I think Stellan Skarsgård is the front runner. I'm not ready to change that yet. I could change it once I see Hamnet, depending on Paul Mescal's performance. And I know Sean Penn obviously already because I saw One Battle, and then same thing with Jay Kelly, which I see next week. For Sandler, I think Sandler gets in. It'll be his first nomination. That's a narrative that's also overdue. I mean, the Academy probably hears that every goddamn year that he comes out with a movie that's not a Grown-Ups spinoff. I've got Jay Kelly in picture. We'll talk about screenplay here in a minute. I think it gets a supporting actor nomination. You know, it's going to be in the mix for maybe 4 Oscars, I think, which could be enough to get it some of these top-of-the-line nominations too. And then I just put in Jonathan Bailey for Wicked for Good, much like I said in the lead actor category with Wagner Moura, how he was kind of teeter-tottering and seesawing back and forth. Bailey's been doing that for me too, where he's been at 5, then he was at 6, then he was at 7, then he was at 4, then he's back 6, 5, you know, he's kept doing that. So he's in the 5 now because I dropped Jeremy Strong out for Deliver Me From Nowhere, because that movie I think is dead. So I do have Bailey in. You know, I think that character in Act 2 is much more prominent than he was in the first one. And I know that he's going to be heavily involved in that kind of like fantastical kind of like love triangle that, you know, goes on with the main characters. So look out for Jonathan Bailey. He just got named the sexiest man alive. You know, he's such a fucking nice guy, like a great dude. Everybody loves him. He got the kind of, what was it, out of left field? Was it the SAG nomination he got last year? I mean, they loved Wicked. That's the acting branch. So he honestly is probably the strongest one for that 5th spot right now. And then on the next slide, I was just talking about Jeremy Strong. I just swapped him with Bailey, so he's down to number 6. I think it's dead. He is a really, really good performance in that movie, though. Whereas Jeremy Allen White was too muted and kind of toned down. Jeremy Strong was very transformative and basically became this dude. And, you know, it was reminiscent of Edward Norton's nomination for A Complete Unknown, but with a little more like energy to it. Jacob Elordi, I moved up a couple spots for Frankenstein. It's just a creature. It's a monster, right? And we were talking earlier about Amy Madigan. It's just not something the Academy does, guys, okay? Do I want them to do it? Yes. and that's with sight unseen. I mean, you can see Frankenstein right here. I mean, I got him on my wall. I've got a statue of him in my house. It's weird. But I love that character. I love that story, the Mary Shelley story, and mostly all of the iterations that have been done on that character. I just love the inherent themes in that story. And I love a lot of the actors involved, including Mia Goth, Christoph Waltz, Elordi, obviously Oscar Isaac, Del Toro's. We've already talked about his legacy with the Academy. So could it be enough to push Elordi into the 5? Yes. I'm hanging tight until I see the film, honestly, and I see it in about 2 days, so I can't wait to check it out. And then I got a couple Sinners actors in here. I don't think either one of them get in, but they're basically tied if somebody did get in. Would it be Delroy Lindo, who is memorable in the film, bit of comic relief, and he has lineage with the Academy. He's been around for a long time as an older guy. He's been snubbed before, The Five Bloods, even though I think that was lead, but he got snubbed there. And Miles Caton is the other option, who is brand new. Never had any feature credits, definitely never been in the Academy conversation, but he's arguably a more pivotal character in the narrative, especially with the musical sequences and that kind of stuff. So if it was one of those guys, they would probably go Delroy Lindo just because of the name recognition. But, you know, I don't think either one of them get in right now. I think it's, if my 5 doesn't shake out to be what it is, I think it's probably Jacob Elordi for Frankenstein. He's the upset. Maybe Jeremy Strong if they give Deliver Me From Nowhere something. And then rounding out my 10, I just added in Benicio del Toro. I told you guys that I wanted all 6 of the major One Battle performances to be on the big board. So right now, Benicio is at my number 10 from One Battle. He is phenomenally hilarious, calming, very, very good as the sensei in One Battle. You know, one of my favorite performances in that film for sure. I just don't know if it's impactful enough to the overall narrative or on screen enough, you know, for them to be like, all right, let's nominate him. All right, and the last major category before we get to my new coverage, and I'll show you what my new power rankings are for the new categories, is for Best Director. So here's what we got. Literally the easiest slide in the world to go over. Nothing has changed. And actually, I don't think anything's changed in like 2 months for me on Director. So this will be really boring commentary, but I'll just let you guys kind of look at it, and I'll just run through them real quick. I do think it's PTA's year, but in a split. I don't think he's going to win everything like Christopher Nolan almost did for Oppenheimer. I think he's going to get screenplay. We'll talk about it in a second. and he's going to get director. Okay, that's going to be his two like major Oscars that he can put on his shelf at his house, and we will all be thrilled that he gets those. I've got him right now winning Best Director. I think it would just be insane if he doesn't win. Also, Ryan Coogler, man, pour one out for this dude, because until about a month ago, I would have said the exact same thing about Ryan Coogler because of what he did with Sinners. He doesn't have the, multiple nominations and the legacy with the pedigree with the Academy, but, Sinners was a phenomenon. Easily one of the best movies of the year that blended genre and box office, two things that he's dabbled in the past. Societal issues, which he's dabbled in before, right? Fruitvale Station, other stuff. Now he's like, here's all of it together, and it was a really cool movie. It was really cool, but it was also important without being preachy, right? And One Battle's actually you could almost say that exact same thing about One Battle. So I think those are your top two for sure. But with the international members, okay, and with the kind of tides changing to be more international, be careful with Jafar Panahi. He could very easily leapfrog, and I don't want to say upset because it would be deserving, but he could be a surprise win for that movie. I'm just telling you. It was a tremendous directorial effort. He is so well loved and respected in the industry. I mean, even if the movie wasn't good, he would have a shot, okay? And the narrative with Iran and what he's gone through with his home country and how he kind of scoffs in the face of that and still makes art for us and for Hollywood and for whoever wants to enjoy it is going to go a long way. So just keep your eye on him. I don't see a world where PTA loses, but just, it would be an accident, probably, if it happened, which would be ironic. And then rounding out the five, like I said, it hasn't changed in a couple months. Chloe Zhao, I've always had her in my five. The second I heard she was doing a Shakespearean drama film with the previous nominees, I was like, okay, well, that's it. And here she is. She's still in. She's up at number 4 this month. And then Joaquin Trier, who did get in for screenplay but got snubbed for director for a worst person, I think gets into both here. And I've got him at my number 5 spot currently. Although, let's go to the next slide. John M. Chu for Wicked for Good and Park Chan-wook for Another Choice also did not move. So my top 7 I have not touched it in 2 months for Best Director. John M. Chu would be the swap in for me, probably for Trier, if he gets snubbed again. And if Wicked for Good overperforms what the first Wicked did, which would be more than 10 nominations, right? I think I've actually got it for 11 without Chu right now. So that would be 12, all right, which would be a lot. But that's assuming Bailey gets in. That's assuming it gets production design and costumes and all the stuff it got last time all over again. Obviously the 2 lead actresses, etc., picture, etc. So I think John M. Chu is literally in that 5.5 spot. Like, it's just a matter of, does sentimental value get enough support from the director's branch to get Trier in there finally, which could be a collective nomination because of what they did with Worst Person. If not, I think it's John M. Chu's. Park Chan-wook, this could be a monumental nomination where they give him director, but he doesn't get into picture. Screenplay is also an option. We'll get there in a moment. But the WGA thing, I don't know how that's going to shake out. How beautiful would it be? And honestly, shocking would it be if the only thing that it got was a director nomination for Park Chan-wook or screenplay? I mean, tremendous. I mean, I'm so happy just even thinking about the possibility. So I've got him in the mix because of that, because everybody knows that we owe this guy. Like, he has got to get on the Oscar nominate in the envelope at some point. I mean, it's crazy. So I've got him in the mix. I did move Josh Safdie up, I think, 2 maybe. I've already talked about it. I'm just not sold on it. It's his first effort. It seems like kind of a higher energy, non-Oscar-y type of vibe to the film. Is it possible? Yes. I think it's more possible in some other top-of-the-line stuff, obviously, like picture and actor, which we already talked about. And then you have the supporting players in play also, but screenplay we're going to get to in a second. So it could happen. I'm just not super sold on it. We already talked about Del Toro. He's obviously going to go to the board until the Oscars are over because he's Del Toro. So right now I've got him there because it's not in Best Picture, basically. And then Kleber Mendoza Filho from The Secret Agent, I just added because of, like I said, the increasing chatter and support for that movie over the last month. Every day I hear a little bit more about it. And I think once it's released, and hopefully when I get to see it, then I'll be like, oh, okay, direction this, camera angles this, that, this close up, then I can kind of see the direction firsthand as opposed to whatever we just get in the trailers. So he's in the mix for me. I think it's a definite possibility. But I do think The Secret Agent would need to be in Best Picture, because if you look, the 2 international directors I have in right now both have Best Picture nominees. So, if The Secret Agent gets into Best Picture, then absolutely, you're looking at probably a much better shot for Fiddleho at that point. So that's my near misses, my bench, if you will, for director. You guys made it through my top of the line categories there. Those are my monthly updates. These next ones, 5 new categories I'm going to introduce for you guys. The real commentary for these will come in on the next video when I do updates. What I'm going to do on this video is just premiere what I'm ranking these films in these various categories, and it'll be a rollout kind of method for me. So every couple weeks, I'll introduce another 4 or 5 categories until eventually, the week of the Oscar nominations or right before that, I'll have all 24 categories with power rankings and my predictions and blah, blah, blah. First up would be adapted screenplay. There you go. You basically see all 10 there on these slides. Like I said, I'm just going to premiere them to you. That's what I have. I have one battle after another winning adapted screenplay. You can see the other players in the mix. I do think Hamnet is probably its strongest competition. Rian Johnson is going to get nominated again. I mean, I've heard it's maybe the best Knives Out movie, and the first 2 did get nominations. So he would be getting nominated for all 3 there. An interesting one that I want to show you that will come up a little bit later when we get to some tech predictions, if this stays in place for me, is the Clint Bentley, Greg Quidar Train Dreams nomination for adapted screenplay. Sing Sing got a screenplay nomination, but not a Best Picture nomination. So I'm kind of following the same path for that one with the same team writing it. So I'm just hoping that ends up being something that comes to fruition, very similar to like Sing Sing. Now, Sing Sing should have gotten into picture. So I hope we're not as pissed off that Train Dreams misses if that ends up happening. That's the 5 I have. And then you see on the near misses over there, all possibilities. I just saw Nuremberg last night, actually, and I would probably move that up a couple spots after seeing it. It's very, like, verbose, dialogue heavy, a lot of different characters, a lot of, like, research in the time era and the way the government spoke to each other and that kind of stuff. So that may actually go up. It would definitely be above The Life of Chuck, so that's a little outdated, but it's still in that 8 to 10 range. And then, I think the number 1 runner-up right now is Wicked for Good for adapted screenplay. Musicals it doesn't always happen for musicals, but again, if we're doing a whole Lord of the Rings kind of situation with this, and that's the way the Academy kind of where their mindset is, then it's going to get a lot of categories that we might not expect out of the gate, and this could be one of them. And then shifting to original screenplay, I've got Sinners winning this one. This will be Ryan Coogler's Oscar, I hope, although I've already told you guys, be careful with it was just an accident. That's why I put it at my number 2. That is definitely the spoiler film this year, especially from like an international standpoint. I do think Noah Baumbach gets in, especially since I have it in Best Picture. Not for director, but for screenplay. So I do, and he's obviously a well-respected writer. He's been there before, so I think that he will get in for screenplay for Jay Kelly. I've got Trier and Vought in for sentimental value, and then I did leave, okay, calm down everybody, this may change, but I did leave Noah Oppenheim in for House of Dynamite. It is just such a well-written screenplay that has to shift POVs and characters telling the same story in an engaging way, and it worked for me. I think it's a smart screenplay. Obviously, Oppenheim knows what he's doing. If House of Dynamite gets that lone screenplay nomination, remember September 5. And remember, I told you that in November. I'm sticking with it right now. It could change. And then you see the near misses. Some of these will make sense to you based on the other predictions I went over with you on this video. I've got Marty Supreme, The Secret Agent, Is This Thing On?, Blue Moon, and then the other one that you have not heard me mention in this video is Sorry Baby. That is a brilliant screenplay from Eva Victor, who is also the star of the film, and it deals with, some pretty tough issues around sexual assault, but it does it in almost like a lighthearted, kind of like comedic way, and very brings a lot of levity to the screenplay, and the performances, of course, help too. So I would love to see Sorry Baby get something at the Academy Awards. It's going to be all over the Independent Awards, the Gothams, the Spirit Award. It's going to be fucking everywhere. But when it comes to the Oscars, I just don't know if it's going to have the strength. But if it did, it would be in screenplay. All right, I'm also debuting my predictions or power rankings for animated feature for the first time. This is a tough category this year because almost none of these are out, with the exception of maybe the trailers. We just don't have a lot of information. Obviously, the guilds and stuff, we don't have any of that stuff yet. I will say, though, that I think K-Pop Demon Hunters is the runaway winner, no matter what happens the rest of the season. So the winner is probably going to be fairly easy to predict, unless we have ourselves an Across the Spider-Verse Miyazaki situation, where it's like that's the clear winner, but they go with this more auteur, indie, grassroots kind of film. That could happen. If it does happen, it's also probably going to be Netflix. It's going to be Little Amelie or The Character of Rain, which is one I've heard a lot of great things about. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what, the animated branch and the Academy are showing some different things the last few years. I mean, it really happened last year too, because The Wild Robot was the front runner all year. It was winning every critic circle. It was all over the fucking, it was like, even I predicted it because I'm like, it's just won everything. And it went to Flow, of course, which was an inspired win, and I loved it, but I wouldn't have predicted it because it didn't look like it was going to happen on paper. So that could be a similar situation where K-pop Demon Hunter suffers because of that. But right now I've got it winning. It's just a phenomenon. I mean, my kids won't stop fucking listening to it. It's crazy. And then you see the rest. Rounding out would be Zootopia 2, Little Amelie, like I mentioned, Arco, which is from Neon, and Naza 2, which is from A24. So I've got those two independent studios getting some animated love in there this year. And then the near misses would be one I actually just got a screener for called In Your Dreams. I haven't watched it yet. Another Netflix. Even in animated, they have 3 players. It's great. They have so much on their plate. A Magnificent Life from Sony Pictures Classics. Chainsaw Man. I decided to add that in for the international factor, and because that apparently that is a phenomenon. We're talking about K-pop Demon Hunters. Chainsaw Man is like making like billions of dollars. Like people fucking, my son was like, oh yeah, you don't know Chainsaw Man? He has a chainsaw for a head. And like, I'm like, what? So I had a press invite to see it, and I didn't go. I wish I had, so I could see what it was all about, but I've heard amazing things about it, and it has that international piece to it. And like I said, I don't really know what the hell's happening this year, so that's why it's on there. Elio I thought was a good movie, but it kind of bombed. That's another entry from Disney. I think their major play is probably going to be Zootopia 2, especially since that'll make a lot more money at the box office. And then I rounded out with Universal having a player in Bad Guys 2, which was a sequel, and it was pretty good. I don't know what to put in there yet. There's a few other players that I have right outside the 10, so that'll probably end up changing. But those are my animated power rankings to get me started. All right, here we go. International feature. And, much like lead actors every year, international feature is always really, really exciting. This is a situation where I've only seen one film that I'm going to be talking about in this 10 right here, because they're not out yet or whatever, or they're not available for me to see yet. It was just an accident, number one, period. Sentimental value, as you can see, I also have in. I do have The Secret Agent higher in the rankings in international feature because of the international support for I'm Still Here, and I think that's going to translate over to this year's Oscars, if not more, because of the additional members, etc. So those 3 movies are all from Neon, which means can I really put a 4th movie from Neon in? I didn't put Park Chan-wook in. Like I said, I think the Academy seems to be addicted to snubbing Park, so what am I going to predict? I don't really think any of them are going to miss, honestly, but at the same time, I can't tell myself 4 Neon films are going to be in the international category. So somebody's going to miss. Maybe 2 of them even are going to miss. So right now I have no other choice out. I did put The Left-Handed Girl, which I've heard great things about, and The Voice of Hen Rajib, which is a distributor called Willow, which is a small distributor, but I've heard the film itself is like so impactful and emotional and important and real, and it contains archival footage of, I think, this little girl that's being held prisoner or something like that. I don't know the exact details of it, but it's a true story, and includes actual footage of her kind of asking for help, which is going to be brutal, I would imagine. So probably a very important story that's going to make a huge impact on people. I think it was just an accident. It's your clear winner, at least right now. Aside from Park Chan-wook, The Sound of Falling, which did really well at Cannes, and that's a push from Mubi, which doesn't have a lot going on this season, so I think they could go far with that film. Sarah, Belin, and The President's Cake from Sony Pictures Classics, which is an Iraqi film. So that would round out my initial 10 power rankings for international feature. What do you guys think? And then finally, the last category, Jesus, I'm glad I brought my drink out here with me, is for best casting. All right, so speaking of not knowing what's going to happen, we've never had this category. This is the first year for this category. Am I lame? And did I put only Best Picture nominees, or at least that I'm predicting, in the 5 for best casting? Yes, do that. But I also did that because I don't know what this is going to be. I don't know if it's going to be a SAG ensemble situation, or like, are they going to reward it because it has the biggest marquee names in it? Are they going to reward it because it has, international actors in it, or newcomers who were discovered? Or a mix of all that shit. I don't know. I honestly don't. So because of that, I decided to be somewhat safe in my initial rollout of this category, and then kind of flex it throughout the next couple months. But I think one battle after another, when you think casting, directors, best casting, we were just talking about how this film, none of the other ones, just this one, is in the conversation for breaking an Academy Awards record for acting. It could get 6 actors nominated for the same film, which has literally never happened. There's been 5. It's happened for 5 actors, and that could actually happen too. So they could tie the record, or they could break the record. I think right away you're going, okay, well, I mean, it's the best cast. I mean, you know, everybody in the fucking cast is going to get nominated. Not only that, you have the supporting players that do like the interrogations and the Christmas Adventure Club dudes, and like, I mean, the acting on is just all over the place. Is just top tier. So I think Sinners and Wicked for Good are great competitors for what I'm saying. They all kind of have the same criteria that I'm explaining for one battle after another. But with it being PTA's year, a PTA film, and this cast that's like, you know, unrivaled in terms from like top to bottom, and then you do have newcomer Chase Infinity in there that's getting recognition and is discovered. You know, she'd only been in, I think, in music videos before this. And then let's say Chase gets into lead actress. Okay, so now you have an actor in all 4 major acting categories, at least one. You might have more, right, in the supporting categories. Then I don't know how that wouldn't get nominated. You know, it would seem weird that you would have, let's just say 4 for safety reasons. So it would be weird to me if you had an actor nominated, possibly winning, but let's just say nominated, in all 4 of the major acting categories, but then you didn't get best casting. Like, that would seem strange to me from a logistics standpoint. So movies like Sinners and Wicked for Good, Marty Supreme, Sentimental Value, they're great, but are they going to have an actor represented in all 4 categories? No. Even if they hit the hardest, they're not going to. I think the closest, like, kind of like offbeat win here would be for like Marty Supreme, because it's a mixture of like Oscar caliber performers, Gwyneth Paltrow, Timothée Chalamet. It's an A24 film, but then you have these newcomers or non-traditional actors like Tyler the Creator. What's the dipshit from Shark Tank that I don't like? O'Leary or whatever, he's in there. So it's Odessa Zion, which is a newcomer that would be discovered. I mean, she's been around, but yeah, from an Academy standpoint. And then you see what I got for near misses. Again, they're all, for me, best picture players, except for Frankenstein, Wake Up Dead Man, and Begonia. This is going to be one where I really will dive into it more. I'm actually having my buddy Fuji on this weekend. We're going to record, and I'll put it out for you in the next week or two. But me and Jonathan are going to like kind of brainstorm this best casting category, and I want to see where his head's at. And I'm going to show him this, and we're going to kind of try to talk through it, because I don't know what to expect. As I'm recording this, I just looked up at my camera. I have been recording this video that I'm going to edit down for you that you're watching right now, if you stuck around, for 1 hour and 51 minutes. That's what I do for you when I do my power rankings. This 1 liter Code Red somehow still has some in it. Mountain Dew, if you'd like to sponsor me, I love me some Code Red. Don't forget to look down below for the links to all the videos I tagged for you on this, my previous predictions, future ones when they come out. You can also subscribe over the website if you want to get them updated in real time and you don't want to wait around for the videos. You can do that. Channel memberships are open. You can hear my brainstorm sessions before I roll out these predictions. And every 2 weeks now, leading up to the Oscar nominations, I will be presenting you with at least 4, sometimes 5 new categories and their power rankings until eventually I have all 24 and I'm ready to roll into my Oscar nominations predictions in early January and see how many I can get right again. That's right, again. I did really well last year. I'll see you guys out here soon. Thanks for tuning in the garage.